going to be online, and you can see it later on whenever you have time or you feel like doing a quick review and all that. And as you know, we are doing Punnett Scholar, and our topic is genes, heredity, genetics, eugenics, euphenics, anything to do with the traits, alleles, and good, bad, and ugly. We talked about the viral disease and bacterial diseases. We are dealing with COVID-19, and on top of that, we talk about how the mules are made and the good characters we take from the plants and animals and have the bear breed. And you guys talk about your beautiful, beautiful, lovely fur babies, and you may be having parakeet or parrot and things like that. So, what role DNA, genes, chromosomes, crossing over, PMATs, do you remember? All those things they are going to play. So, that all I'm going to do a quick review and I will upload it in the classroom and you can see it later on. So let's talk what is heredity. So for that we need to know the which word. If you need to have heredity, for that you need to have something which you are actually going to inherit from your parents or give to your next generation. So it's a trait, it's a characteristic properties, and we have already talked like how many can that be. They can be the ones which are physical appearance, your psychological makeup, your physiological characteristics like how your body works, and then there are the good ones, the beautiful babies born, or the bad ones, the cancer and different kind of diseases running in the family. So that would be heredity, when the trait is going to be inherited from one to next generation, right? So now that comes brings us to the question, what is a trait? Trait, again, the property, the characteristic, the way we look, the way we think, and we are very emotional people, or sometimes, as we have already talked, that was the funny part, that we talked about that TV show paternity courts and all that, when people are not ready to believe who is, if the baby is theirs, and they have to go ahead and check if the baby is theirs, and you can do that with what? DNA testing, right? So how do we keep track of all these traits? Of course, we can see and all that. There's a pedigree chart, sometimes you have to pay like 900 to $2,500 for a purebred dog. So what is that? Means we are trying to keep a track of their genes, their DNA, and like if they're purebred, if the father and mother they belong to same species of that particular kind of dog, or whichever animal you're talking about. Like if we were talking about today derby races, right? So those horses are, they cost as much as a nice new beautiful expensive car. So we can keep track of those traits through pedigree chart. So there comes the question, and that's in your quiz also. What is a pedigree? Pedigree means a diagram where you can show the history of the trait, and you can talk about the good bad qualities, there are patterns, if there's any genetical disorders, we can take care of that also. And pedigrees, if you are doing that specifically for breeding of the animals, or you are trying to make a new species of high yielding crop or fruits, or you want to raise any kind of farm animals who are stronger and they work longer hours but they are very obedient and all that, so you would want to go and check their pedigree before you write the check. And pedigree also helps, here comes the interesting question. That's a question for research, which it's not pedigree but it has genetics in it. Which is the royal disease from Queen of England and Victoria's family, and it's really horrible, and sometimes people will bleed to death. That is your cue over there, which is the disease where people will bleed to death, and it ran in Queen Victoria's family. So you need to totally go ahead and research that, and we can talk about that in our class or just for your own understanding. And now we are saying genetics, this DNA, genes, chromosomes, and all that. So who was the guy, who is the first person who would be even called like father of genetics? So he was Gregor John Mendel, and that's also again one question in your quiz. Gregor John Mendel, he was living in 19th century. He was actually a monk, you know. So after doing all his Bible study and priest job and all that, whenever he had some time on his hands, he'll go to the garden, the yard, tiny yard within the church, and he would try to do some research and some um, data collection about the sweet peas, you know, the garden peas, Pisum sativum, that is the botanical name. And he used to keep a record book of that, and he died. He didn't get fame in his life. And later on, when we started knowing more and more about this all, we have started to understand, oh my god, he was so right, and he was doing it without any computers and without any modern machines and all that. So the things he has told and the things we know today, we can have some new vocabulary words. And the first one would be genes either show up or they don't show up, but they are kind of immortal. Remember, we have talked about that they can be showing up and they cannot be showing up. They may skip a generation, they may come and show up after 5 generations of not showing up, and but they are not going anywhere. So that's why people love their kids so much. We say genes kind of make you immortal and all that, because it runs in the family and it may be coming from 1,000 years ago, you know. So if it's showing up, what would you call it? The dominant genes. And if it's not showing up, what would you call it? The recessive genes. Dominant, you see everything. So this is all showing up, and it may not be there. Maybe I got it from grandma or my mom, or I may be getting it to my daughter, or maybe skipping one generation and granddaughter may be showing it up. So what? So if it's showing up, it's dominant. If it's sleeping, it's recessive. So remember that. And those traits, where do they come from? They come through your DNA. You say, yeah, DNA, genes, the miracle of life, the blueprint of life. So where these are found, they are found in the chromosomes on which you got the genes, and it passes through inheritance, heredity, from one generation to other. And remember, we have talked about 23 pair of chromosomes. So half and half, 23 is coming from dad, 23 is coming from mom, 23 pairs. And how are they, how many types are genes over there? The pair of chromosomes, a gene pair, when it's a pair, you know. When you have chromosomes, you say chromosomal pair. When gene is a pair, when the gene is a pair, you call it what? Allele, an allele. And in allele, it may be one from sperm, which would be the male part, and the other one from ovum or egg cell, which would be the female part, means father and mother. So when the chromosome is this structure, that would be having the blueprint of life, because it's having the genetical information. This is the information. This is the trait which is going to be the show up, dominant or not show up, recessive. And then what's going to happen? It would be inherited. It may be showing up, not showing up. And if it's showing up, it's phenotype, physically, outside appearance. Genotype means it's there. It may be recessive, but it's there. So chromosomes got the blue. And how do they look like? They look like an X, and when they are expressed, they are dominant. When they are not expressed, they may be sleeping, and they may be what? Recessive, right? So how can we predict it? And we have talked about that when you see Law and Order, or you see Lovely Bones and all that. And earlier days, before 1990s, where there used to be no fingerprinting, what did we have? We had the blood group and structure of bones, I mean the teeth and all that, and the tip, you know. Remember fingerprint? We said DNA fingerprint. Before DNA fingerprint, they were actually the fingerprint. This structure, the lines over here, the pattern over here, and in the tip of the fingers, they are very specific for every individual person. So DNA fingerprinting. And what is the square? What is the place? What is the design? What is the structure which we use all the time? And that's the topic we are learning nowadays. What do you call it? You call it Punnett square. Remember, it's a square divided into 4 portions, and you can see the possible combination of genes from the parents, and male and female. And then what can you have? You can have the one from mom, and then you can have one from dad. So male gamete and female gamete, right? Do you remember that dominant would be written as what and the recessive would be written as what? Do you remember the caps, the letters in caps and the letters in the not caps, like small letter? So say we are talking about Punnett square and I filled it up. So what do we have? Whichever character we are talking about, it can be in dominant form, which would be what? The cap